And now I'd like to call upon Tammy Cote to speak to us about culture, land, and identity from the perspective of the Algonquin Anishinabeg host nation.
Kwe, Tammy Anishinabeg, Kitigan, Zibi, Nindonjaba. The language I just spoken is Anishinabeg Mawin, Algonquin language. You will not hear this language anywhere in the world, but here on Algonquin unceded traditional territory, for which I welcome you all here today. Before I begin, I want to say Kichimigwech to Elder Albert Dumont for your good words you shared with us today, and also for your prayer that's going to start us off in a good way. So Kichimigwech. I also like to say miigwech to the City of Ottawa for having me here today, because I think it's very important that we start connecting and building those relationships. So I'm very happy to be here today. So miigwech. Today I want to talk a little bit about how do we transform spaces and how do we decolonize those spaces here in the City of Ottawa. These are some of the topics I'd like to discuss. For me, being an Anishinabeg Kwe, I think it's very important that we have Algonquin strong presence here in the City of Ottawa. We have to have more visibility, more respect, and more recognition, because people need to have that understanding when they come to the City of Ottawa that it is located on Algonquin unceded territory. So we need to make sure that we're visible. For the Algonquin Nation, we've always been welcoming people, welcoming others, new settlers, old settlers, tourists to our territory. We're always welcoming people. And we welcome other cultures, to celebrate other cultures on our territories. But how do we transform the spaces to make them more culturally appropriate? How do we have dedicated spaces that's going to reflect who we are as Algonquin people? These are some just examples that I'd like to provide on how we can decolonize the City of Ottawa. For me, when I'm driving down Sir John A. Macdonald Parkway, who is Sir John A. Macdonald? Prime Minister? Former Prime Minister? What did he stand for as Prime Minister of Canada way back in the day? You know, what was his role when it came to residential school? You know, I've heard he had his role to play as Prime Minister. Coming from a family and being an intergenerational residential school survivor myself, my mom attended residential school. She was stolen at the age of 6 years old. My aunties and uncles were stolen as well. My community is Kitigan, Zibi, near Maniwaki, Quebec. It's an hour and a half north of here. They were put on a train and stolen from their families and sent to Kenora, St. Mary's Residential School. That's very important to have that understanding, because this is Canada's history, and we can't forget that. And we're not talking about years ago. When I talk about history, I'm not talking about years ago. I'm talking in my mother's time, my aunties, my uncle's time. So that, for me, this Sir John A. Macdonald, I think we need to do something about that parkway and change the name. Another statue that comes to mind is Samuel de Champlain. That's located at Nepean Point, just beside the National Gallery. What's the purpose of that statue? It's to commemorate his voyage on the Ottawa River. As we all know, the Ottawa River watershed flows all throughout Algonquin unceded territory. So what does that statue represent? You know, for me, when you're surrounded by colonialism, it doesn't feel like a welcome space for me, being an Anishinabeg. It represents racism, oppression, genocide, and colonialism. So we need to think about that now, because I just live just on Cartier Street here, not too far, and I walk all the time in the City of Ottawa, and I don't feel welcome as Anishinaabe. I don't even feel welcome on my own territory. So we need to change that, and I think we can change it together. We need to balance those colonial spaces with Algonquin history, told from our perspective and views. This is our story, when we talk about Canada's history. Tessawat. Tessawat, there's a statue located across the river. He's an Algonquin chief, well-known Algonquin chief. He's the one who controlled the trades that were happening on the Zibi, you know? And I think that's a good start that that statue is there, because it's balancing the colonial statues that we're surrounded with, you know, to show our history and who we are as Anishinaabe. Bridges. How many bridges do we have in City of Ottawa? I was trying to do a search earlier online. There's a lot of bridges. Not one of them, I haven't seen not one of them is named after, named an Anishinaabe Moen. Could we not have changed the Alexandria Bridge and rename it to Tessawat, because that's where his statue is located? For me, crossing that bridge and having all of the Algonquin flags represented as you're coming into the City of Ottawa, that would be an amazing sight for me to see. A flag represented from each of the 11 Algonquin Anishinaabe communities. The parks. There's a lot of parks too in the City of Ottawa. I haven't seen any parks dedicated to Algonquin people. Can we not rename the parks to respect our history and to preserve our language? When I'm talking about renaming parks, renaming street names, renaming bridges, it's also about preserving our language as Algonquin, and it's sharing our beautiful language with others. I would love to see a residential school park, a park that's dedicated to residential school survivors. I would like to see a park that's dedicated to the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. That would be a good place as a starting point to have that park so people can go and to have ceremony and to start that healing journey. That's something I would like to see and I would like to vision for City of Ottawa. We also need cultural spaces for our gatherings and our ceremony. Right now, I don't see any in City of Ottawa, a dedicated cultural space, so that way we can practice that ceremony here on our territory. For me, it's all about a sense of belonging and pride to be Algonquin on my territory. And I want to ensure that there's that visibility and presence of who we are as Algonquin people. The Mayor, Jim Watson, mentioned earlier the Pimisi Station. I went to the station, beautiful, beautiful station. That's a good starting point. That's a good example of what I mean on how we got to decolonize spaces. Pimisi means eel in Anishinaabe Moen. There's 2 LRT, light rail cars that are named Amik, which is beaver, and Wagush, which is wolf. 2 of our beautiful young youth back home in my community submitted their names in the contest, and both their names were chosen. That brings a lot of pride to them, our youth who are watching us, you know. A lot of pride for them to go to the Pimisi Station. And when I walked in there to see my mom, my uncle's paddles hanging from the ceiling, wow, how welcome did I feel there to go to Pimisi Station. You know, we're always willing to share our culture, our history, who we are as Anishinaabe, because we have a beautiful culture to share. And we're always willing and open to share it. We have to be given the opportunity, however, to share that. I would like to see more of a prominent role of the Algonquin Nation in the City of Ottawa. You know, we do have flags. I don't know if you're aware, we have 2 flags here represented. One is the Algonquin Nation Anishinabeg Tribal Council. The other one is Kitigan. I would love to see all of our flags represented from all of our 11 Algonquin communities. So I'm here today to speak to you because for me it's about education and awareness for the residents here who are living here in the City of Ottawa, for the City of Ottawa staff, for the tourists who are coming to visit, you know, our territory. How do they know this is Algonquin unceded territory? Where's their welcome? You know, we have to show that visibility and that presence. And it's a good thing, it's a good feeling, you know, to know whose territory you're on. There's also a lot of festivals, which I participate in a lot, and it's awesome to participate in these cultural festivals. I think it's important to celebrate culture, not just Algonquin, but all culture. It's very important because we all have to feel that sense of belonging. I also will point out, though, we have to ensure when there's these festivals, that protocol is followed as well. And we have that land acknowledgement, we have that welcome from the Algonquin host nation when you have these cultural festivals here in the city of Ottawa. I want to caution moving forward and how we go about defining cultural spaces, because for too long we've been overshadowed by the colonialism here in the city of Ottawa. So we have to be careful when we're starting to celebrate cultures. I'm all for celebrating all cultures. We have to make sure that the Algonquin culture is not being overshadowed and that we're up front and center, because this is our territory. I'm happy the work that the Algonquin Nation is doing with the City of Ottawa. I know there's some good work that's being undertaken, and I think that's a good start. So that way we start building those relationships, we're making those connections. The most important thing is we're trying to develop this cultural plan. For me, the most important thing is we need to be part of the decision making. We need to be sitting at the table making those decisions on our territory. So I think it's very important that we're part of it. Anyway, so I'll end there. I just want to say Kitigan for allowing me to share today some very important key messages that I think need to be said here today. And I look forward to meeting you all later during the discussions and dialogues. So, Kitigan.
Megwich Tammy.